Welcome to another session of the Industry Series Dialogue. I am Pragya Mishra and I'm heading the Customer Success and Operations Department at Courseplay. So organizations invest billions in professional development, yet the transition from classroom theory to boardroom practice remains notoriously difficult. Today we break down why high impact training often misses the mark and how to bridge the gap between acquiring knowledge and sustained behavior change. To discuss this topic, we have joining us today Akshara Damle, a TEDx speaker and psychologist who blends deep therapeutic healing with intuitive guidance to help leaders achieve emotional freedom. Hi, Akshara.
Hello.
I'm so excited to have this conversation with you and to have you joining us discuss this very interesting topic.
Same here, Pragya. Let's get going.
Perfect. Let's dive deep into the first question itself. We often assume that once learning happens, your behavior will naturally change and it'll follow. But that's rarely the case in reality. In fact, in Courseplay, I have been working with a lot of L&D managers, and I do see that the first step or the first layer is just training. But in your experience, where do you see this breaking down most in real workplace contexts?
I think this is a very critical problem for a lot of companies or organizations per se, because while there is a lot of spending that happens or expenditure that happens on the training, but then the results of that is not seen much among the participants or the employees. So one of the major challenges that I see in these things is we may have to break it into multiple facets.
Sure.
One is during the process of training, the way trainers are, handing over the information or the skills that during the process of training, and then later part of the training, what happens further, right? So during the training, what happens is many times people do not come with many times participants come with a mindset that, okay, let's have some fun because they think that training is all about fun, right? Yes, training includes the element of fun because the trainer needs to create that interest among the participants, but it is not just a funny event per se, right? So that is one first thing that we need to look at. The second thing is many times trainers go on giving a lot of gyan in terms of by running the PPTs after PPTs. They just bombard a lot of information to the participants, and participants do not know how to absorb all of them. So that is another challenge where it just goes overboard for the participant. And the third thing that I also see is that whatever is being said, many times participants think that trainer doesn't have the practical understanding whatever happens in the ground. So they think that whatever is being said is all theoretical that cannot be implemented. So there is also a responsibility for the trainer to showcase whatever he or she is training out there can be implemented in the real time, right? So that kind of understanding needs to be given to the participants. After that, okay, now they have learned all these skills, knowledge, or traits, and so on. But now there is also a requirement from the trainer side as well as participant side in terms of creating accountability mechanism. In terms of whatever being learned in the training, how far they are going to practice, and can they be each other's accountability partners to check on, are you practicing those things on a regular basis? If these things are done, generally the learnings continue to exist for a long period of time. I can give you one of the examples because I did this training for premium sales, in the sense premium selling premium watches. Let me not take the name of the company for the confidentiality aspect. So the one of the challenges that the store manager was sharing with me was that a lot of customers come here with a lot of money. I mean, money is not a challenge for them, but then they still keep asking for discounts, and we do not have that much of margin. So how do we deal with that? So I conducted a training program for the sales managers or relationship managers, whatever we call. And what we saw is the relationship managers themselves were throwing that energy of discount from their side because they felt that the watches were really expensive, because this relationship managers were coming from the middle class or lower middle class, whereas the customers were from the upper class, right?
Yeah.
So that was playing around. We addressed all of that. And I created that accountability mechanism by the end of the training so that they will check on each other. Did you practice this? Did you practice this at least once in a day or twice, once in 2 days or something like that? And after a year, I visited the store just like that, not as a trainer, just for some other interaction. And then most of the relationship managers who were there, who were part of the training, came to me and said, "We still practice whatever you taught 1 year ago. Not just that, it just didn't help us in our professional life, but also in our personal life. So our life has changed after the training." So that is something that every trainer also has to work towards so that the training really stays with them for their life.
Yeah, this is actually very relatable. What you are saying is something similar to what happened in school, right? We would just have theory always. We wouldn't understand the concepts. We wouldn't know what next to do. But then there were a very few batch of teachers who would take examples. So this watch example that you gave was brilliant because this is how even I remember of how change actually happens, right? You're giving examples to make your learners or your trainees understand what the impact is. So this becomes extremely relatable as well. Uh, Thank you for that. So my next question is, even when people clearly understand what needs to be done, there's often a gap where it comes to actually applying it. The same
Yeah.
example that you've just explained earlier. So when people don't apply what they've learned, what are the deeper and the less visible factors that create resistance?
Yeah, so I think the onus is on the trainer here in this case because trainer needs to show how the information or the knowledge is applicable in the real time, right? So when we give those demos, maybe through role plays or maybe through case studies and so on, how the learnings can be actually applied in the real life scenario, that is when the participants will also take interest in learning them or understanding them because they see the value of those learnings in the training program. So, whatever the resistance comes, because generally, this is again one of the challenges that I have also seen in the beginning. I can give you another example where I was working with the jewelry sector, right? A jewelry company. And again, I have no experience of the nuances of jewelry making and the designs and so on. But my expertise is in terms of looking at the human relationship, again, relationship manager with customer and so on. So initially, the participants again they have experience of working in the same industry or same company for 20 years, 22 years. So they come with that kind of resistance, like how this trainer can teach me, who is an experienced person in this industry for so long,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah,
these kind of resistances will always be there. And it is always good to have such resistances. That is when the real challenge for the trainer also comes on the ground, right?
correct.
So what I did whenever that kind of a resistance came was to give them whatever I mean, I use them as resource. Whoever the experienced person, whoever has the rigidity or the resistance, I use them as resource in the training program. I say, okay, now you teach us whatever the learnings that you have had in all these years. So
Hmm.
initially they get welcomed. That is what is
Yeah,
required for most of them.
correct.
Once they have taught whatever they have learned in their experience, then I say, okay, these learnings are great. Can we add a few more things to this so that it becomes better?
Yeah,
Then they also become open to learning. So once they become open to learning, then rest of the crowd is easy to grab the knowledge.
yeah,
So first and foremost thing is to address the resistances in the room and then make them relatable and understand that this training is not to teach them or make them feel that they didn't know anything of these, but training is to refine their skills whatever they have so that they can do it better. They can learn things in a different way and deal the real life situations in a different way. So that's when things really go well in the training.
yeah. Otherwise, the training would just become like a one-sided thing, and then
Exactly.
the learners are just trying to absorb, and then they keep forgetting. I don't think that will have a lot of impact also.
Yes.
But this becomes two-sided, and then when you have someone who's a leader in the company already fall for the way that you're training them, like you said, the rest will follow.
Yes.
That's brilliant. And in your opinion, beyond skills and knowledge, there are often internal patterns at play that influence how people act in real situations, right? And how do these internal patterns like fear, identity, or past conditioning interfere with translating capability into action?
I mean, these are the issues where I use the knowledge of being a psychologist, because I deal with such issues on a one-to-one basis quite a lot. Say
Yeah,
self-doubt, fear, anxiety, or their own inhibitions. So
yeah,
these are the things that keep coming in human interactions. And that is where a lot of challenges come in at organization levels too. Say, for example, in one of the cases, there was again another company where there was an issue between the marketing team and the digital marketing team. In the sense, digital marketing team comes within the marketing team, but the traditional marketing is different
doing.
from the digital marketing, right? So
Yeah,
there was a tussle between these people,
yeah,
and the apprehensions the marketing team had was not being communicated to the digital marketing team, and then there was also a resistance and fear for a few people to share, because they were worried what if it is just getting going to get rejected.
yeah.
So because of that, there was a communication gap between the two teams, and this was becoming a challenge to the company, because both the marketing has to go hand in hand. It cannot happen. The traditional marketing and digital marketing cannot be isolated
Correct.
from each
Yes,
other,
correct.
right? So in such scenarios, many times what we also see is all these patterns that you rightly mentioned, like be it fear, inhibition, or self doubt, all this come because of their own internal childhood trauma that people carry. So maybe training per se may not be sufficient enough to address these challenges, because fear about anything need not be universal. Like I may be scared to talk to boss, which may not be the case with my colleague, right? So
Correct.
why is it coming? Because one person may have fear towards an authority figure, which may not be the case with the other. So where is this fear coming from? It could be coming because of the childhood trauma. I can give you an example again. This didn't happen in a training program, but in an individual session, but with a corporate leader. He's in the mid managerial level in a very big IT firm.
Okay.
And he had this challenge. Whenever his boss would call him for any interaction, he would get anxious. Whenever there is a meeting, he would get anxious. Whenever there is a presentation, he would get anxious. And because of that anxiousness,
Yeah,
even when he is very well prepared, he would mess it up, and then he would get a negative feedback, and then his appraisal would get impacted. So this had become a vicious cycle for him.
yeah,
So that is when he reached out to me saying, can you do something about it, because I really have a good caliber, I know that, but right at that moment I'm missing it out, and then things are going really in a down the south. So that is where we looked at, and then something very interesting came, that he had a challenge to work with any authoritative figure, because when he was in school, his when he was in fifth standard, his teacher was very authoritative, and he tried speaking to the teacher, and teacher just bombarded with a lot of scoldings. So that is when the child felt that talking to an authoritative figure is going to be disastrous. So the same traumatized child is still within him, who is now say 45 years old, but even at this age, when he is interacting with the boss, the traumatized child just pops up and says, "Hey, don't go there. It is going to be disastrous." And
hmm,
every time it is becoming disastrous. So in
hmm,
such cases, dealing with the childhood trauma is important. Maybe that needs to be addressed one on one. But at the same time, at group level, what we can also do, this is something that I did with the law firm, where the partners of the law firm were quite seniors to the juniors. So I created an ecosystem there where they could have open interactions with the partners. Though they are very senior, they are very learned counsels.
yeah,
Still, that kind of channel was created so that the participants, towards the end of the session, they said, whatever I had not spoken in last 5 years, I could speak in just 10 minutes during the interaction in the training program.
yeah,
So the baggage of the 5 years could be liberated in 10 minutes or in a day during the training program. So that is the kind of environment that we can create, or ecosystem that we can create in the organizations. But if there are deeper trauma that a person carries, then that may have to be resolved through an individual intervention.
Yeah, that's the beauty of effective training, I believe.
Yes.
Um, that was a wonderful example that you gave, because what was going on in my mind was, of course, see, every individual have their own traumas,
Yeah.
but how, and it's not possible for every trainer to interact one-on-one with a lot of their trainees, right? But then you answered the question. It was just popping up in my head that how would you deal with this on a larger scale? But you
Right.
answered that, so that's again amazing.
Yeah.
Uh, so the last question of this segment would be, if the real goal of L&D is behavior change, not just knowledge transfer, then it calls for a fundamental shift in how learning is designed.
Yeah.
So what do you think needs to change at the core level in the way programs are structured? Because again, like I said, I do speak with a lot of these L&D managers, and what I've seen is that a lot of these programs are created at one level by the management, and then it is all transferred eventually, right? And trainers are told this is how you're supposed to go ahead with this. So how can this shift happen?
Um, Very simple. First and foremost, any training program should not have a PPT. This is what I have seen, because initially when I started my journey as a trainer, I also used to carry PPT, and I felt that getting stuck with the PPT, and PPT is always filled with information,
Hmm.
right? So we are not able to connect with the participants directly.
Right.
So I realized it early in my career, and I said no PPTs.
Hmm.
So many times the L&D heads of the organization get worried also that you do
Yeah.
not have a PPT, you do not have a handout, you do not have anything. You just ask the participants to bring some drawing sheets and crayons and then a notepad and a pen. Then how are we going to create or give that knowledge transfer? Actually, what a trainer should do is that the knowledge transfer can happen through the behavioral change itself. It need not be, again, there is a very critical thing here, that behavioral change cannot be done by filling some information into the mind of the person.
Yeah. Right.
Behavioral training has to happen by working at the emotional level, which cannot happen by the knowledge transfer. So if there is thing that we need to bring a shift in, it has to happen at emotional level. So the moment there is a freedom to, I mean, what I do generally, I mean, there could be different models out there. I can share how I work. So I create a broader framework around the topics that we need to address, right? And then I always keep some space buffer to bring something new then and there based on what are the participants come bringing onto the table. So
Right.
I create that environment so that I understand what are the challenges. I'll give you another example so that maybe it can be related by the audience better. So
Yeah.
I was working with a steel sheet manufacturing company, right? So the primary idea of the training was to understand and address stress levels of the people, and also create a work-life balance for the participants, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So when I started the training, they were all again very rigid, because again, the most of the trainings that happen is all technical training, not the human relation or human management trainings that they generally happens for them. So they were all rigid, and the moment there was no PPT, they were all wondering what is going to happen now. And then when I started interacting with them, one of the deep trauma that they were all carrying was helplessness. They were feeling helplessness to express with their colleagues. They were feeling helplessness to seek support from the colleagues. They
Right.
were feeling helplessness even at their family front. And the whole crowd was going through this. So, whatever the activities that I had planned, I just parked them aside and I took up some other activities. This is something that a trainer always should have, that whatever you have planned may have to be kept aside, and something new has to be brought in to the table. So I came up with some other activities, and then they could relate with what is really happening in their systems.
Right.
So, when we are able to do that, that's when we will be able to bring a change in the behavior. So, the communication became easier in the organization. They themselves started looking at the problems in the system, and they said these could be the solution. So, instead of trainer telling the solutions, if the trainer can facilitate the participants to come out with solutions which are practically implementable. Because when you have given a solution, then there is no resistance for you to implement it. But
Right.
when I have given a solution, then the first reaction is always a resistance that this will not work.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that is how a trainer can bring the solutions into the place and get it implemented through the behavioral change. That is when things really last for long.
That's fantastic. But one question that will definitely pop up. Again, this I'm saying with my experience of working in L&D for so long and hosting a lot of these sessions, is that uh, you are definitely bringing about a very unique change in the way training happens.
Yeah.
But how do you calculate the ROI of this?
Yes. Very important. I mean, when you're running a business, you have to look at ROI, right?
Yes.
So, how do we ensure that ROI happens is not based on one day's training, right? So, what I always say is on that day, you may not see a significant shift in the people. So,
Right.
that is where some simple activities, say, generally, what I do is I give a 10 minutes activity for all the participants to be practiced on a day to day basis.
Okay.
Now, out of all the 24 hours, I'm negotiating for 10 minutes, which is easily possible. Again, that 10 minutes is divided through or spread across the day. It is not like one full 10 minutes or one block of 10 minutes that they have to give. So,
Right.
when we spread it over, then it is easy for them to practice. So interestingly, one of the this is in another segment. I mean, this is a company which is working in the automotive segment, primarily with the chemical industry in for the automotives.
Okay.
So the training was on stress management. I did the whole training. They liked it, and the feedback was pretty good. But that could be the case for many trainers, right?
Yeah.
But interesting fact was the country head happened to reach out to me after 6 months, saying, "I can see a change in the employees since that training program that you conducted the other day." And people, I can see that people are doing something. I don't know what it is because I'm not aware what you taught to them. And they said it is very confidential. They said you can attend his training some other time.
Yeah.
But then I am seeing that they are practicing something, and I can see that there is a shift in the way they are working. I can see there is an increased level of happiness among them.
Hmm.
So that is what the shift is. So that is when the ROI happens. So many
Yeah.
times ROI may not be immediate for any organization,
Correct.
especially in the case of training,
Yeah.
but we always should look at how it is becoming a compounding interest for the company in a very positive way. So
Hmm.
maybe it will be difficult to objectively say that this is what it is going to be, but then on a larger perspective, what I've seen is there is definitely an improvement in the work efficiency of the employees,
Right.
which definitely contributes in better profitability for the organization.
Yeah. So we can probably say something like good things take time,
Yes.
because you will not be able to probably see the effect tomorrow or right after the training, but in the long run you yourself are getting feedback uh, from your trainees and the people that you've interacted, and the example that you gave, that you visited the watch store after a year
Yeah.
and you could see the switch
Yeah.
in the employees and the learners. So that's amazing. Thank you for
I can
answering.
give you, I mean, just if I can interrupt, I can give you one interesting, since we came back to the example of watch store. I can give a tangible outcome of or ROI aspect of a training.
Yeah.
So, interestingly, the training program for them were divided into 3 weeks because they cannot shut the store. So, I
Yeah.
used to conduct the training from morning 8 to 10 before they open the store.
Oh.
So,
Hmm.
that was the scenario there. Interesting thing that happened was that after the first day's training, when I went for the second week, two employees told me that they were actually thinking of taking away four different watches from the shelf because nobody was buying
Hmm.
it, or they were not showing any interest towards it. But after they started doing the exercises that I had taught them. All the four watches got sold, which is like
Out.
eight. I mean, in total, eight watches got sold. And in any premium watch store, no watch is lesser than 20,000 or 15,000. So if you calculate that way, so 1,60,000 is the gross amount that they got within 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So that is how ROI can also be established.
Immediate calculation of ROI also happened in this case.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. Super. Now there are these rapid fire questions that I'd like to ask you, and I'd like you to answer them as quickly as possible.
Sure.
After the first thing that pops into your head.
Yeah.
The first question is one word. Why doesn't learning translate into action?
Trusting in the process.
Biggest blocker, fear, habit, or environment?
Fear.
Completion rates or behavior change? What do you pick?
Behavioral change.
Can training alone drive behavior change? Yes or no?
Yes.
One shift L&D must make immediately.
Take away the PPTs.
That's amazing. That's the end of the rapid fire round. But all of these answers were brilliant.
Thank you. Thank you.
Super. So, Akshara, I think I have learned a lot from today's session. Thank you so much for what you are doing for the training world. I think that's a very big impact that you are driving. And I hope a lot of our viewers and our trainers learn from this. And yeah, thank you so much for taking time out.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking to you. The questions were really brilliant. I mean, very spontaneous, and I think we had a wonderful conversation. It was very pleasant talking to you.
Super. Thank you. Thank you so much.